All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining in to the DiCOM webinar, Loan Review and Risk Reporting Simplified with CQS 11.1. I hope you all are as excited as I am to talk about this really important topic. It's something that me and Tom Royal, who is our Senior Vice President of Innovation, hear often during our travels from either clients or prospects, that this is an area of importance and really an area for improvement for all of credit risk and loan review departments that we come across. So I'm very excited to welcome you to this session here. It will be approximately 45 minutes, so the entire duration of the session will hopefully have those of you on the East Coast still ready to attend a lunch at a decent hour. So before we begin, I did want to talk about some of the housekeeping items just so you kind of understand the format of this session. We are recording this session, and this is really just so we can share what we've developed here and some of the information that we present in a broader sense after this webinar, but we're not going to be sharing any of your attendee information, so please understand that we keep that confidential. We are going to keep you muted during the webinar, so all the attendees will not have voice capability. However, you can submit questions via the GoToMeeting chat panel, which I believe as a default is on the right-hand portion of your screen. You should see a chat panel that you can direct questions towards the organizer and the panelists, so only myself and Tom can see the questions you submit. And if time permits, at the end of this session, we may answer a few key questions. However, if we don't have time, and we butt up against the end of the session, we will follow up directly and answer your questions directly via email. And also, as an added note, Tom and I would love to hear from you after the webinar. We'd love to get your feedback. We'd love to hear how you enjoyed the webinar, if you have any areas for improvement, or if you just want to chat. We'd love to hear from you. So a little bit about us, the voices behind this webinar here. I'm Jim Alexander. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for DiCOM, and I'm joined with Tom Royal. He's our Senior Vice President of Product Innovation. And on my side, I'm really involved in prospect engagement and support. So I support the evaluation of folks that want to look into DiCOM and our solution, Credit Quality Solution, which we'll refer to as CQS during this webinar, and I help assist that evaluation. In addition, I focus on voice of customer and voice of market research in order to support and help Tom as he develops the innovation timelines and the product roadmaps. In addition, I'm really focused on market intelligence and feedback, and this is both through our existing clients as well as through prospective clients. As we engage in the evaluation process and demos, I also take a lot of feedback that we learn from the various prospective clients that we talk to and try to identify best practices in areas that can support product innovation, which is really where Tom's focused. Tom is really focused on taking all this information to make sure that CQS remains relevant in the industry and leads the industry in many respects. So as we identify emerging trends and needs within the loan review and credit risk market, we are constantly innovating and sharing that innovation with the marketplace as well. So this is kind of how we really support what we like to call the DiCOM ecosystem. And the DiCOM ecosystem is something that Tom and I help shepherd, but your participation on this line by joining the webinar, by completing our industry survey, and all the other different ways you can engage with DiCOM, which I'll go into at the end of this webinar, really do help support that ecosystem, which is kind of a symbiotic world in which your help helps us help you, and in the end, we really make loan review a better process, hopefully in the process itself. So the goal of this session is really to help better understand the challenges associated with credit risk reporting, and some of those challenges that we've identified through our discussions with clients and prospective clients alike are that the process is too manual. It's not nimble enough. You may have an executive manager or a board that has different requirements over time that is very difficult to stay ahead of the curve and the needs of those that are consuming credit risk reports. We also hear that there's too much reliance on IT, that it's challenging to get reports changed, adjusted, get access to data. And we also find that many of our clients and prospective clients have challenges getting reports across the entire business, which is something that through the right interactions with DiCOM, we can help consolidate all your information into one area, supporting that process and making consolidated horizontal reporting much simpler. So we also want to talk about the different levels of reporting. Often, we get into discussions about both the macro level risk identification and reporting, as well as the micro level risk identification. And the macro level is really all about portfolio analysis, concentration analysis, trending, aggregated trending over time. And then the micro level risk identification is really what a lot of the folks do in loan review, flipping files and collecting information about particular credits, particular borrowers, or particular relationships. However, this information can often be aggregated and then also overlaid against some of these portfolio analysis, so you get a better, more holistic risk picture. So we're going to talk about how we can do that with CQS and potentially support your needs there. And last but not least, you're going to hear a little bit about us talking about the importance of the DiCOM ecosystem. And again, you don't have to be a client to be engaged in the DiCOM ecosystem and help support credit risk and loan reviews. So that is something that we want to make clear. Both Tom and I are very, very involved in the industry and love interacting with potential clients and really just those that want to be advocates and progress the loan review industry. So by all means, we definitely are always open for discussion. So now as we get ready for the demonstration, I did want to talk about kind of the architecture of DiCOM's Credit Quality Solution, or CQS, just so you have a frame of reference as we go through the demo. Because Tom will point out, right now we're in the loan review module and we're evaluating this particular data set and providing this particular report. So this creates the framework for really the demo. And just so you have that framework or point of reference, loan review is really all about the micro level risk analysis. This is about optimizing your loan review process and providing you with the streamlined workflow, as well as access to tools and data to better provide reporting up the chain. Portfolio analysis is all about that kind of holistic macro level risk analysis, more of the kind of concentrations, trending, things of that nature. And then last but not least, we have Portfolio Monitor, which is another module which is all about really monitoring credits of interest, pools of risk, and it's a continuous monitoring solution. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to be focused on loan review and portfolio analysis, just so you know. So at this point in time, I'm going to hand off the communication over to Tom, and he's going to get into the exciting stuff and show you how CQS can really help improve your reporting process. So if you'll wait just 1 minute, I will go through the process of handing off to Tom. And in just a moment, you should see his desktop.
All right, perfect. Thanks a lot, Jim, and good morning to everyone. As Jim mentioned, we're really excited to show some of the new reporting capabilities that we developed in CQS 11.1. That's our current release that we just released a few weeks ago. And what I'm going to be focusing on is just kind of really what are some of the new enhancements and features that were incorporated in that reporting functionality. Before I do that, I really just kind of want to touch base and give you an overview of what our goals were when we set out to really overhaul the reporting engine in CQS 11.1. We definitely had some goals inside of what we wanted to accomplish. And first and foremost, we wanted to really put the power of reporting into the hands of the end user. A lot of the feedback that we get is that getting reports or business analytics and things from the IT group is really challenging. It's time consuming. You have to wait a long time. So really the goal of our report designer platform is to put that ability to create reports into your hands, your user, so you don't have to rely on IT support for that. In doing that, we really wanted to make sure that it's easy to access all your review data, everything that you collect, your findings, your exceptions, everything that's part of the review. We wanted to elevate that and make it easy to get to, as well as core data that you would use for portfolio analysis and trending and those types of things. We also wanted to make it easy to summarize and aggregate information at any level. So if you wanted to roll up, exceptions, for example, for a particular review, or even, exceptions or, trends and comments and findings across, a year-over-year comparison, we wanted to make that easy. Make it easy to compile information across multiple reviews, really show what activity has taken place for an entire year, be it calendar year, fiscal year, etc. We also wanted to add charting and visualization capability. Reports are moving down a path where they need to be, more dynamic, more, easy to point out trends or, areas of risk within a review or a portfolio. We also set out to make sure that we supported report versioning. So if you've got different versions of, line sheets and different versions of reports that you need to develop, to support your business, we wanted to do that. And then just make it easy to share your findings. So, once you've created your report, you got it, it looks nice and pretty. It should be easy to distribute that out to others in your organization, or just give them access to run the report directly. Okay, so that's enough overview, I think, of just what we set out to do. I think it's time. Let me dig in here a bit and kind of show you where we ended up with CQS 11.1. First and foremost, what I'm going to do is demonstrate our report catalog. Now, all of our reports are organized into a centralized report catalog within CQS. The majority of these reports are customizable, and what we do is we ship out CQS with pre-built report templates. So we have templates, for example, for credit completion and exception reports, and a lot of different report templates and report styles, and with the idea that you're going to take those and you're going to customize them. The report catalog itself has the ability to group the reports, and by category, by report name, description. You can show and hide and customize how you want to see your report catalog, and as well as there's some administrative capabilities to delete reports, create new reports, change the name reports, create versions of the reports, etc. So our goal was really make it easy to access the reports. You don't have to go find it in some shared folder. You don't have to go to SharePoint. You don't have to go to all these different places and get your information. We wanted to make it efficient so that you can quickly get to the reports that you need to run. So that's a quick overview of the report catalog. Now let's kind of take a look at some of the reports that we've newly created for CQS 11.1. First, I'm going to start at that macro level view of the portfolio and demonstrate one of our portfolio analysis reports. And this would be an example of industry concentration and performance report. Now, as I mentioned, the report's easily accessible through the report catalog, and by clicking on that, I come up into a report viewer. Now, reports can be parameterized. In this case, I'm selecting a data date for a point in time for this information. With this particular report, what we've done is we've put together really what the concentrations are within your portfolio by industry. So you can see in this particular portfolio, now I am looking at demo data, but it is fairly representative of what we commonly see out there in the banking world. Real estate and rental and leasing is our highest concentrated industry within this report, and this was all done by outstanding balance. Taking it a step further, we're looking at what's the breakdown of those concentrations. So we've got percent of total outstanding balance. So this particular industry is at 18% of the total outstanding balance of the bank's portfolio. Of that, 40% of that is criticized, and 9% of that is classified. So we can kind of see some distribution in areas of concern and risk. Now, since we keep multiple data sets in CQS over time, we could also start bringing in some trending components. For example, we can look at how much of this particular industry has been downgraded since the last month or since the last 6 months or even year. So this kind of gives us the ability to look at if there's any migration of risk, or growth, what's the growth of the industry, and that type of information. So this is an example of, again, like one of our portfolio analysis reports. You could also do this by loan type. You could do this by, even regions of the bank or geographic regions. But the idea here is really just to give you access to see what trends are developing within your portfolio. And again, everything can be driven by parameters. So if I want to go look at a certain point in time, I can do that as well. So the next report I wanted to demonstrate was an example of one of our review risk rating stratification reports. So this is something that, after a review has been completed, you may want to take a look at, how did that particular review fall out as far as the, your different risk rating distributions. So we've got reports, that will determine, okay, within our review, this is our, review information, how many were in the sample, what's that total exposure, et cetera, how many of that was passed, and just a general distribution of, special mention, substandard, doubtful, et cetera. And again, this is a kind of good to use this in comparison to previous, portfolio analysis reports to say, are review findings consistent with the overall portfolio? Or are we seeing any different, changes in the portfolio based on our more in-depth analysis that we're, doing as part of the loan review process? Some other reports that we have, that have gotten some great feedback on, for example, might be like risk rating change history reports. So this is a new report that we developed. Again, this report is customizable. And this is basically a recap of all the activity, all your risk rating changes that occurred during the review. And not just what the changes are, but since we have the ability to track risk rating change reasons and standardize that information, we can report on and display risk rating change reasons. So why were, why were these, why did these downgrades happen? Why did these upgrades happen? Et cetera, as part of the review. We can also compare, original bank core information, what was the original review based on, what was loaded into the system, as well as what was identified as part of the review process. Next report, I'm going to demonstrate here is some of the improvements that we've made with our line sheet report. Now, this is really what I call the ultimate loan review report. This has all review information and everything that you did as part of the review. Now, one key thing that we added as part of CQS 11.1 is the ability to take attachments and attach them at the review level. And as long as those attachments, for example, this is a sample document that I attached to the review, or a Word document, they will print in line as part of the line sheet report. So you could write up a summary, put it into a Word document. This would be your executive summary, et cetera, for the overall review. Attach it to the review upon completion, and then have that print in line with your overall line sheet report. Other information that's included in here, basically all your borrower information, note information, collateral, et cetera, comments, exceptions. This is really an example of an all-encompassing report to basically show everything that you looked at as part of a particular review. I'm just going to jump down here real quick. You can also search within these reports, just kind of show you some of the reporting capability that's in the viewer. I can find certain things. I can export this out or email it out in various formats, like Word documents, PDF files, Excel documents, etc. But again, these reports, they're designed in a way to bring in any formatting that you brought into the report, and to really capture the analysis that you did as part of your review. Now, finally, one report that I'm going to demonstrate just out of our report catalog is some new reports that we're developing to look at performance. So how are we doing as a loan review organization? Where are we in the process? How are our reviewers doing? So this would be an example of a review performance management report. Now we're starting to see some of the charting capabilities. We're looking at it, year-over-year comparison from 2018 to 2019. We can also track what our progress is versus the goal. If we've got a coverage goal of 40%, we should see this little line tick up as we get closer to reaching that. Summarized information for, how many loans we've reviewed for the year, what's our coverage again. Even break down by quarter. So if we want to look at, by quarter, who was reviewing what, we could see, now this is my demo database. I'm doing a lot of the work here. But in Q4, I brought over some imaginary loan review officers into my world and had, a little bit better distribution of work that was done in Q4. Now we've got a number of helper views to help present this information in different timelines. So if you wanted to see, if you're a very active organization, a large organization with a lot of reviewers, you can break this down by week, by reviewer, by different regions and things like that. This is really just a kind of a summarized review of activity by quarter. Okay, so that was an example and really just a quick overview of some of our new reports that we have in the catalog. I will say we have about 70 different reports as part of our report catalog, and that catalog is growing. We're always, developing new exception reports, new, performance reports, new PA reports. And whenever we develop a new report, that report can be distributed, to our users and uploaded through the report catalog maintenance utility. So you don't have to take a new release. Essentially is just, as long as you're on the most recent release that the report was developed on, we give you a file, you come into the administrative tool, you upload it, and the report is now in your catalog and available for your users. So that was an example of some reports, like I said, that we've pre-built. Now I'd like to kind of give everyone a look into what does it take to build a report, because that's really the challenge. If you've got to develop a new report, you got to start from scratch. That's typically, a task that can be daunting. Now we've had a report designer tool in CQS for quite a few releases now. However, we've received a lot of feedback that it wasn't as easy to use or create a new report, and it had some limitations. So what we did with CQS 11.1 is we, took a step back, really overhauled the entire report creation process with the goal of making it much easier to use. So I'm going to go into our report designer tool and actually going to build a report here on the fly. We created a new wizard to help with this process, and I've mentioned a couple of times we've got data views that also help support it as well. Now for the sake of this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a quick and easy exceptions report. Maybe I've been asked to kind of show what are exceptions that we've cited this year, grouped by our high-level exception categories. And maybe we want to see like total exposure, outstanding balance, and an aggregate of each. So I'm going to launch our new report wizard. And with every report, it has to start with a query. And this is basically just what information do we want to feed into the report. Now, if you've ever built a report out of Access or Crystal Reports or Business Objects, a lot of these concepts are very similar. It does require that you have some knowledge of how our data is structured in CQS. However, we do have a lot of documentation and diagrams to show how these relationships exist. All of our data views are created in a way that it should be fairly intuitive, so you can see what information you're looking at. Just kind of a brief overview of many of the views that we have here. We've got it broken up by core information. That's the information you've brought in from your core system. This is prior to the review work to be started. And then review information. That's the actual loans and everything that you have reviewed in CQS. So for our exception report, we're going to need to use our review exceptions view. And when I drag this over, it's essentially going to ask me, what columns do I want to include as part of my report. Now, I could easily select all and grab everything, but for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to keep this report fairly small. There's probably about 5 points of information that I want to look at. So I'm going to look at exception type. That in CQS, that's our high level view of your exceptions, basically exception categories. I'm going to bring in exception details. That's the actual exception that would have been cited for the review. And then I've got attributes that I can bring in here as well. And attributes are kind of another level of exception information that you can configure in CQS for things like risk rating and mitigation, is follow-up required, etc. So I'm going to actually bring over risk rating, whether or not that risk is mitigated, and whether or not any follow-up is required, because that's information I want to include on my report. At any time during this, I can look at the results. I can see everything that's coming across. I can see I've got some blank fields here. And then essentially, this is basically all of the exceptions. Now, I did mention as well that I'd like to see this maybe aggregated by total exposure. So to do that, I can join or bring in the note information that was part of the review. So whenever I bring this over, there's a utility that's going to suggest basically that I have to join these together. I've got my notes, I've got my exceptions, I have to join it, and it's going to ask me which columns I want to do that. Now, I'm familiar with the information, but if I wasn't, my documentation would tell me that I need to join the node ID to the node ID and exceptions, and done. Once that's done, I've got my note information, and I can choose, my risk ratings, anything I want to do as part of this. I'm only going to get outstanding balance just to keep this simple. The other thing I said I wanted to do is that I only want to look at exceptions that I've cited this year. So I can filter this out if I wish. And I'm just going to quickly add a condition that says that any exception with the created date, I want that to be greater than or equal to, and the filter tool is smart enough to know that this is a date, so it's going to give me a date picker to do that. So anything equal to or greater than the January 1st, because I want to focus on things for this year. So once I say, okay, I'm done, I can preview my results here now. You can see I've got a much smaller list. These are just the, like I said, exceptions I've cited this year. And now my note outstanding balance is brought in. And done. So I can click OK. I'm happy with this query. I can move on to the wizard. It's going to ask me what data members I want to select. I want them all because I want to include everything on my report. It's also going to give me the option to group by any of the fields that I brought in. And I'm going to say, yes, I'd like to group by exception type because I want to see what's a roll-up of exceptions and how much of that exposure, or at least outstanding balance, is by exception category. So I'm going to include my exception type. My summarization, I want to summarize my note outstanding balance. And I've got a number of different functions that are available to me. There's counts and variances and averages. I'm just going to do the sum. I want to see what my total outstanding balance is by exception category. And I'll name my report, and done. So now what happens is our wizard goes out, it creates a report, it really suggests a layout and gets all the data on the screen. Now I can look at it, I can preview it here to see if I'm getting the information back that I want. And from a high level view, this looks pretty good. It's grouped by exception type. I can see by each category. I can see what my risk rating is, whether or not the risk was mitigated, etc. However, there's some things in here that I'd like to improve on and change. I'd like to maybe format my numbers. I'd like to make my fields bigger and wider. Maybe I want to, change how this looks. Or, a feature that we have in here now is I may want to create some computed columns. So if I wanted to do maybe a weighted risk rating of this, risk rating, whether or not it's mitigated, maybe I want to have some weighting to that so I can have a calculated risk, and weight that by outstanding balance, etc. So I can come into the designer and I can, there's things I can do to make the fields bigger, and I can change my label headings and all that. Now, I'm not going to take you through all that now. What I'm going to do is I actually took this report, customized it, made it look a little different, added those things that I did, and I'm just going to jump over the report catalog to view that. So you don't kind of have to watch me retype all this information and change my labels. That'd be a little painful to watch. So I'm not going to save this report at this time. I could easily save it. If I do that, it's going to ask me what I want to call it, where do I want to save it in the catalog. This is just a demo report. I'm actually going to kill it. And now I'm going to go back into my report catalog viewer. And I've got my demo report here, my exceptions with attributes by category. And then this is an example of where I may take that report that I just created. So same concept, same information that I brought across. The only difference here is I did bring across the date and the total exposure when I created this report before. But I've also enhanced this report a few different ways. So I made it look a little nicer. I brought in my logo. I kind of brought in some parameterized information. I had, ability to, if I want to set a risk rating threshold on this and only report on things that are greater than a low or high, I could do that. I also added a chart here, so I can see what my distribution is and where's my, greatest areas of risk by an outstanding balance standpoint from exceptions. So for example, financials is where, I cited the most exceptions and cited those on some fairly large loans. I had risk rating justification exceptions that I cited as well. And I can see what that, currency breakdown is for those. So this is just kind of one way to really see, do I have any high risk exceptions based on my risk rating model that I, cited as part of my process. And I can also see the breakdown of this. Now I summarized this slightly differently. And really, this is really just a formatting of my grouping. So now, again, I'm grouped by exception category. So collateral, what's my total exposure and outstanding balance breakdown? When was the exception cited? What was the borrower subcategory? Which is my, collateral value. That was the exception. Risk rating, whether or not it was mitigated. And then I actually created a new computed field to take that risk rating and add a multiplier in there, whether or not the risk was mitigated or not. So the idea here is that you could create all different types of scorecard type matrices and things, to calculate out weighted risk ratings or any other model that you wish as part of the report. Further just breakdown, I can see that, I've got credit structure, what were the breakdown there, financials, here's our total exposure and outstanding balance, and really the an average of our weighted rating at the bottom. Now I can continue to work with this. I can take it a bit further. I can do a conditional formatting if I want to. So if if a risk rating is greater than a 3, maybe I want to make this red. Maybe I want to make it yellow. That's really up to me. But the idea is that any of these elements within the report are customizable and can be changed. And once it's done, I publish it. I put it out into our our report catalog, and anybody can come in here that has access to CQS. They can come in here, run these reports at any time, and if they wish, either export it out to download it, or email it out to other people in the organization if they want to really share this up the chain. So that, in a sense, is really an overview of our new reporting platform. Hopefully this kind of gives both people some ideas as well as some insights and the types of reports that can be developed in CQS. Just to give kind of a quick, glance at other reports that we have in here. I mean, we've got concentration reports, as I mentioned, by a lot of the different, collateral type and NAICS codes and node types and purpose codes, criticized and classified information, delinquency, reporting, basically reports that can summarize exceptions on just about any which way you wish. As well as, risk rating distribution reports, risk rating changes, anything that's happened within the review, and finally some system reports and, audit reports and things of that nature. So that's basically an overview of reporting capability. Hopefully, as you've seen, the report designer tool is incredibly powerful. It does put access to all of the information in here to the hands of our users, and really gives you that capability to summarize and aggregate that information by any which way you choose. Now, at this point, I'm gonna check and see if there's any questions that was submitted as part of this, or if there's any questions after seeing what I've submitted. Please feel free to enter those into the chat panel now. And if there aren't any questions, I'm going to turn it back over to Jim.
Okay, and I am going to take control at this point. It doesn't appear that we have any questions, which means, Tom, you did an outstanding job. Must have been somewhere close to perfect, but I know this is the way of the world sometimes, where you may come up with a question that occurs after the webinar. If that is the case, certainly would ask you all to contact us directly, and we're happy to answer those questions. And really, at this point, I wanted to take a moment and first and foremost, thank you for joining us. We had everybody stayed on the whole time, which is outstanding, and really tell you how you can help stay engaged with DiCOM and the ecosystem, and really support us to help you help the industry. And first and foremost, we'd love to have you send me and Tom a LinkedIn connection request. That's one way that you'll see all the new things that we're publishing, as well as new webinars that we may be announcing. And by that same vein, please follow DiCOM on LinkedIn. Following DiCOM software, you'll have access to a lot of the updates with our organization and the loan review industry as a whole. I'd mentioned that we do a loan review survey as part of our ecosystem and how we give back to the industry. Would love for you all to complete that for your institution. If you're not tuned in to our industry survey, I would ask you to reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to kind of tell you all about it, give you some past data from some of our previous surveys, show you how it might be useful in helping you benchmark your organization against others. We're really proud of this survey, and we know there's a lot folks in the industry, both clients and non-clients, that leverage this information. We would also love for you to contact us with feedback, questions, or just to talk. If you've got something in your organization or something that you see as an emerging trend, or you have an idea that you think might make a good webinar, reach out to Tom or I. We'd love to talk to you. And last but not least, scheduling a demo of CQS is a great way to stay engaged. And I don't mean that purely from a, hey, we want to get you in and sell you on the system. We'd love to have you evaluate the system and see how it might align with your organization. And based on that evaluation, we'd love to get your feedback on how we can continue to evolve the product line. That helps us become better. So these are all ways that you can stay engaged, and we hope that you'll do that. And I just wanted to finish with the last slide here that has both Tom and I's contact information. Both of our emails, our first initial last name at DiCOMsoftware.com. Both of us can be reached via phone. Obviously, contact us directly if you want to chat. And we thank you for your time. This is, I've enjoyed it. I'm kind of a reporting nerd. I hope that you found something of benefit, and we hope to hear from you afterwards. Thank you so much.